Welcome back. Now that we've covered the basics of press job specific data, I thought it would be a good idea to take a closer look at this and see exactly how this shows up in our designer data sources. The best way to do this is to compare the designer data from two different press jobs out of the same batch, which is exactly what I've done here. I'm using an application called WinMerge to highlight the differences between designer data of a book block press job and a cover press job, both from the same batch. On the left, we have our cover designer data, and on the right, our book block. As we can see in the location pane on the left, for the most part, these two designer data files are identical, as shown by the large amounts of white space in these boxes. The exception being the two areas highlighted in yellow. In fact, the only differences between these files will be the attributes that account for the press job specific data. First, notice that the left side of our compare window is the designer data for the cover, and the right is for the book block. If we review the items highlighted in yellow, we can see some of the press job specific attributes that were mentioned in the previous video. Notice the batch component name for one is cover, while the other is book block. The cover was printed on device type Netgate, while the book block was printed on an Indigo. Additionally, we can see there are different values for DFE and device within each of the designer XML files. If we come down to our second highlighted section, we can see a few other press job specific attributes having different values for job unique ID, created, and spread count. So now, let's take a look at how we can get ourselves into a bit of trouble and end up with inaccurate data on our batch tickets if we're not careful. Here, I've opened up our batch ticket designer data that was exported from the book block press job of the batch. I have collapsed some of the key nodes to make things a bit easier to read. So if we look at line 1774, we can see our batch components node of the data structure, which contains two batch components as indicated by these two items here. If we expand the first batch component in the list, we can see a value of 10696B for our book block. If we then expand the second batch component in the list, we can see it shows 10696C for the cover. This all looks good, right? Well, if we were to use the batch component attributes from this node of the tree as the fields on our batch ticket, the data that displays on our batch tickets will be wrong, for one of them anyway. This is because the data that exists in this part of the tree applies to the entire batch, not just a specific component in the batch. This is the node we would use if our goal was to display all components that exist in the batch on both of the batch tickets, which we would accomplish by using a subreport. If we want to display data that is applicable to the press job that the batch ticket is part of, then we need to pull our data from the product batch components node of the data tree, here on line 2. If we expand this node, we can instantly see the product type, batch component, the device type this press job was printed on, the DFE the job went through, and when this press job was created. All of this data is press job specific. Since XML is not the easiest thing to look at, let's switch over to our report designer and take a look at the data there.